Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I've got another Master Duel video for you all today. So, we're coming back to Ishizu Tearlaments once again, and though the new banlist and selection pack are not out just yet, I'm still testing a post-banlist build of Ishizu Tearlaments. Now, there are still, of course, going to be adjustments made after that because we will be including some of the new cards, most notably at least a couple of the Bestials in this deck, Ishizu Tearlaments, and I think that's going to be largely the standard moving forward as well. But I still wanted to test with some of the new post-banlist ratios, particularly of the Ishizu cards, just to see, just to get a feel of how the deck plays with one Keldo, one Mudora, one Agido, still two Kelbek, but one of each of these cards. And then, of course, we have also omitted terraforming from this build as well. Right now I'm playing a set of DD Crow. These are kind of like, well, I guess to be fair, in a way, this was the case of DD Crow all this time, but right now in particular, I'm using the 3 DD Crows as kind of like bestial surrogates for the time being until the cards actually release here in Master Duel. But, yeah. I have gone ahead and made those adjustments to the main deck. There's not a whole lot of adjusting that happened otherwise. It really was just removing, one Keldo, 2 Mudora, 1 Agido, so that's what, 4 cards right there, and then the terraforming, and so that's 5 cards total that left the main deck. The 5 that came in were the 3 DD Crow, as mentioned before. I put in a 3rd Triple Tactics talent just because this was a card I was already on the fence of playing 2 or 3 anyway, so it's like we'll just slot in a 3rd one for the time being. And I wanted to keep up consistency with this deck, so for the time being, I'm playing a Pot of Prosperity. This is very much a placeholder spot for right now. I will say it could be a part of the deck moving forward. I could very easily see that being the case, but I'm not making a commitment to say Pot of Prosperity is right to play a post-ban list. That's definitely something I need to test more extensively when we actually get the ban list and then the new selection pack coming in as well. The extra deck has not changed at all. I don't really see a reason to change anything in the extra deck. I was previously on the fence about Mudragon, but with some main deck dark monsters in the form of DD Crow and then eventually Bestials, Mudragon obviously becomes a lot easier to make than it was in the past when we were not playing any main deck dark monsters that weren't tiers, of course. So in that regard, I think Mudragon does get a little bit better in the extra deck, and I'll go ahead and keep testing it moving forward. And just looking at everything else in the extra deck, I mean, I can't really think of anything I would want to drop or anything I'd want in more than what I already have here. Even down to stuff like Bagooska, Dugares, the Dark. I still think this extra deck is just super solid. Of course, props, as always as ever, to Jesse Cotton, who originally designed this extra deck, particularly the use of the Zoodiac engine, which is so good. So good. Yeah, it's very, very nice and has been performing extremely well for me. And I suspect that will be the case moving forward. There is a matter of whether or not to include Beatrice. For those who don't know which cards I'm referring to, or which card rather, I'll go ahead and pull her up here. Beatrice, Lady of the Eternals. So, in the TCG, or I think the TCG, at least the OCG from what I know, once the Bestials came out and they were slapped into Ishizu Tearlaments, it wasn't hard to get 2 of them on the board, because they had 3 Magma Hut and 3 Druid Swarm, we only have 1 of each, but it wasn't hard to get 2 of them on the board and then make Beatrice, which of course has the ability to send any monster or any card, not even just monster, any card from the deck to the graveyard during either player's turn. So that becomes a very, very powerful tool to utilize, and is also a way to go into Zeus as well. I could see maybe if you're playing 3 Saranir as well as 1 Druid Storm and 1 Magma Hut, that you could maybe still include Beatrice in your extra deck, but that definitely requires testing once those cards actually come out. I suspect that's a little win more, and we definitely need more of this extra deck than, we could afford a slot to throw in Beatrice. We could take out, Dugares or Bagooska, but I still think those cards would be more useful more often than Beatrice would. Again, that's something we'd have to test, once the new stuff actually drops, but that is something you could potentially include once Bestials come in, is the Beatrice here, so. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to discuss about this current iteration of the build, which again is very super specific because We don't have the Bestials yet, but again, just wanted to test out what the new Ishizu ratios, how that would feel when playing Tearlaments. And I'll say this, the deck does not feel significantly weaker. Like, it is noticeable that you have, like, shufflers much less often, but aside from that, it doesn't feel like it plays any differently really at all, which I kind of suspected was going to be the case. You know, some people were saying, like, oh, now that there's only one Agido, they mill just a little bit less often. Or some people were upset that Kelbek didn't go to 1 because they thought, oh, like, the millers are still pretty consistent. But I've said this so often lately when it comes to Tearlaments, like, the millers are not going to be often used at all in a Tearlament meta, unless you know you're not playing against Tearlaments, because I maintain that if you do not know what you're playing against and you do not absolutely need to use a miller's effect to get plays, then don't activate it, because it's likely enough that you're playing the mirror match that it's just not worth it to get it twisted unnecessarily. I've definitely had plenty of duels where my opponent was very much in a winning position, and then they chose to activate Kelbek or Agido, and then suddenly I had a way to win the game, and did. So, like, there's no reason to just have those, like, free losses. Again, sometimes you do just open, like Mudora plus Agido and nothing else, and it's like, in that case, yeah, you kind of have to get it twisted just to find plays, but if you open, like, those plus Reinoheart, like, don't proc your millers. you're fine with just Reinoheart. Alright, I think that's going to go ahead and cover pretty much everything I want to talk about the build itself. I'm going to break down the list card by card, and then look at some gameplay. So, we're on 3 DD Crow, 3 Maxx, 2 Tearlaments Merrli, 3 Ash Blossom, and a Joyous Spring. Still think it's very, very important to play 3 of this card, and will be more so moving forward, as Brandon is going to see a lot more play. 2 Tearlaments Havnis, 1 Fairy Tale Snow, 2 Tearlaments Scheiren, 3 Tearlaments Reinoheart, 1 Keldo the Sacred Protector, 1 Mudora the Sword Oracle, excuse me, 2 Kelbek the Ancient Vanguard, 1 Agido the Ancient Sentinel, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 1 Foolish Burial Goods, 3 Triple Tactics Talent, 1 Pot of Prosperity, 1 Primeval Plant Perlerino, 3 Tearlaments Scream, 3 Infinite Impermanence, 1 Tearlaments Cryme, and then 2 Tearlaments Sulliek. That's going to be our main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Mudragon of the Swamp, 1 Tearlaments Kitkallos, 1 Predaplant Dragostapelia, 1 Tearlaments Rulkallos, 1 Tearlaments Kaliedo-Heart, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Zoodiac Drident, 1 Zoodiac Boarbow, 1 Zoodiac Shockanine, 1 number 41 Bagooska, the terribly tired Tapir, 1 Time Thief for Doer, 1 number 60 Dugares Timeless, 1 Divine Arsenal, Zeus Sky Thunder, 1 Dark the Dark Chamber Gloomy, and then finally 1 Sprite Elf. So there is our list. Let's look at some gameplay. Alright, our first game is going to be against Branded Despia. No Tearlaments in their deck, but they do have 3 copies of Silent Graveyard, which is a tech I can assume is just for Tearlaments. It's a quick play spell card. That's basically Abyss Dweller for the whole turn. I mean, you all know how I feel about tech cards like that. Like, I don't even like playing going second cards, like Evenly or Dark Ruler no more, because they might be dead sometimes. So, I honestly, side deck cards, like Silent Graveyard, like, I don't even think I'd play Silent Graveyard in any of my side decks, to be quite honest with you. I do think there are better, more generalized techs you can play, even the side deck, but especially the main deck, so. This is a pretty standard turn 1 for Tearlaments. You know, I'm just going for the Reinoheart into Kitkallos line, Kitkallos into Merrli, milling 8, managed to search a Scheiren, and we have a Havnis Ascend, so things are just looking great for us here. Now here we actually have a lot of different decision points with this particular board state, as in there's a lot of things we could go for here. We could go for a Sprite Elf, we could go for a Redoer, we could set up an Abyss Dweller of our own, we could even set up a Zoodiac board potentially, with, you know, the 2 level 4s and the Merrli on the field. We have a lot of different options. So what I'm ultimately going to end up doing is overlaying for a Time Thief Redoer and not activating the effect. I thought that given this just current setup, that was the best way to go to have more disruption moving forward in my opponent's turn, the ability to potentially use Redoer to detach Scheiren and make a Kaliedo-Heart, again, on the opponent's turn here. Sprite Elf was also pretty close in consideration, but I just didn't think that had a... Basically, the idea behind that was just to, you know, summon Merrli on the opponent's turn and mill 3, but at that point, I'm just kind of hoping to mill into a Kaliedo-Heart anyway, so it's like, I might as well just set up the Time Thief Redoer for the ability to Kaliedo-Heart on my opponent's turn, and just leave it at that. So looking pretty good going into the opponent's turn. We have the Redoer and the Rulkallos on board for disruption. Maxx tossing out during the draw phase. Standby phase, we get to take a Dramaturge from the opponent. We have a Kelbek in our hand as well that we can potentially utilize. So Bo's going to Gold Sark, sending a Despian Tragedy. Tragedy's effect's going to activate, grabbing them an Aliber. This is all definitely fine. I'm just going to go ahead and wait for the Branded Fusion and just negate that with Rulkallos, which is coming after the added banishment with the Aliber. So yep, like I said, Rulkallos is going to chain and negate the Branded Fusion. I'll send the Merrli here and proc the effect for a Kitkallos search. That will allow me to, of course, not only put Kitkallos on the board, but then I can even add a Havnis to my hand for potentially some more disruption as well. Excuse me, pardon me. So opponent's got a Branded Opening next. We're going to send that Branded Banishment they added to get an Ad Libitum of Despia. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to let that and the Polymerization resolve without responding with Redoer. This is a little bit awkward though, because now this Guardian Chimera can't be targeted, so I can't really use Kaliedo-Heart to get rid of it anymore. So I decided to just let the effects resolve. I think to myself, you know, even if my opponent does decide to destroy Time Thief Redoer, that would be annoying and that would suck, and if that happens, I'll wish I would have chained the Redoer's effect. But even if it does happen, like activating Redoer here, like I said, does not really do anything because Kaliedo-Heart can't spin back the Guardian Chimera and just gets battled over by the Guardian Chimera. So if I'm going to lose out on one or the other, I just rather would lose the Time Thief Redoer here. But for some reason, my opponent blew up Kitkallos and Rulkallos, and I'm like, that's actually the best possible scenario for me, like, period. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine. So, you know, I'll summon the Rulkallos, I'll mill 5. That will allow me to summon the use the Havnis effect to summon. I'm going to get Dragostapelia, which looks weird here, but again, Kaliedo-Heart just doesn't do anything, and I would like to summon Kaliedo-Heart potentially on my next turn. I mostly just don't want to use it unnecessarily. I think Kaliedo-Heart has more potential to be useful later than something like Dragostapelia. And the other thing I like about putting Dragostapelia and Rulkallos and Redoer on this board is, like, I force my opponent to attack one of them now, but still have to deal with the other two later. So opponent moves to battle phase, attacks Redoer. Again, you'll notice I did not chain the Time Thief Redoer's effect, which looks like a misplay, but the reason I didn't do it is if I had chained it, then my opponent would have battled over Dragostapelia or Rulkallos, and I want to keep both these cards around as disruption moving forward into my opponent's turn. To be fair, the Dragostapelia probably isn't going to do much, because again, the Guardian Chimera can't be targeted, but all the same, we still get to keep both of them on the board here. So my hand's looking fantastic moving into my opponent's turn here. I have the option to do pretty much whatever I want, including proc these Millers, because now I'm pretty reasonably certain they're not on... Hold on, what is this? Pot of Acquitisiveness. Target 3, shuffle all 3. That's interesting, huh? By interesting, I mean weird. I didn't even notice that when I was looking at my opponent's deck. I don't think I've ever seen that card before, but okay. Opponent's got a Branded in red. I'm definitely going to Rulkallos in response. We do not want that resolving at all. Now, I am going to make some misplays here. I will freely admit that I'm about to misplay kind of hard here, because I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, okay, so I can't use, like, Kaliedo-Heart on Guardian Chimera, but for some reason I had it in my head that I could use Zoodiac Drident. I don't know why, but sometimes I just completely forget that Drident targets. Like, I knew she destroys, but I don't know, for some reason I had it in my head that she just doesn't target there. So that was going to be my original plan, and that's why I set things up the way I did, which looks really weird. I was going to go for a Drident, but then I realized right here, I was like, oh shoot, that targets as well as destroy, so I can't actually do that against Guardian Chimera. So I'm just going to summon Dugares, but it wasn't even necessary. With Primeval Planet Perlerino, like, we still have plenty of ways to just battle over it. But Dugares doubling Dragostapelia's attack will not only allow me to battle over the Guardian Chimera, but it even allows me to lethal through my opponent's Aliber coming back as well. I think we probably could have found lethal otherwise as well, but yeah. No matter what the situation, we managed to find lethal there. So yeah, that's our first game. Even though our opponent had some decidedly anti-Tearlaments tech, it looks like unfortunately they did not draw it in time, or if at all. So that's going to go ahead and do it for that game. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, so this time it's going to be a Tearlaments mirror match. My opponent is notably not playing any of the Millers. They are playing 0 Agido and 0 Kelbek. I don't necessarily disagree with not playing Agido. I can definitely see that, but Kelbek, I think, is still good enough as a potential disruption tool that I would still personally probably play 3 copies. So opponent's going to start with Rainbow, Foolish Barrel, Good Sending, Rainbow Bridge. And unfortunately, outside of Kelbek, I don't have too much disruption in my opening hand here, so I'm mostly going to have to just watch my opponent play their turn out. I did kind of think about the Rainbow Bridge a little bit, now that Terraforming is banned, but with Foolish Barrel Goods also being at 1, I can't justify it, honestly. I don't think it's, like, terrible, but it just becomes a whole lot, like I said, it's just a lot harder to justify. Also, to an extent, that's the case with the Millers being at 1 each, but again, I don't know. It seems like a lot of people really, like, consider the Millers to be a core part of what Tearlaments does, but I don't really even factor them into my own Tearlaments strategy. To me, they're a bonus. Like, you know, sometimes, very occasionally, I have a scenario where I know I'm not playing against Tearlaments, I can freely activate the Millers, and then that's a nice bonus. But aside from that, I try not to make them a part of my core integral strategy. Yeah, so the opponent's getting to add Sulliek and a Scheiren here. Like, this is looking really rough for me, I'm not gonna lie. Here I do get to attempt to activate Kelbek. Opponent's going to respond with the Rulkallos, but this is mostly not even just to try to bounce the Rulkallos, because I figured this was going to happen, but now I get to activate Kelbek's effect to get it twisted, mill 5, and hope I can maybe find some way to come back here. At least hope that I mill better than my opponent. I milled a Mudora. That's pretty much it, though. I guess a Sulliek as well. But unfortunately, I milled my opponent a Keldo, so it's like, you know, it didn't even really end up paying off, honestly. Which is, again, another reason why I don't like using... Well, it's different when it's your opponent's turn. When it's your opponent's turn, it's still kind of nuanced, but you typically want to use your millers, but it's still very much situationally dependent. Like, if your opponent's in a situation where they don't have a lot of resources and you do, then even on your opponent's turn, I probably would not want to proc a miller. Basically, before activating Agido or Kelbek's effect, you just want to think to yourself, like, if I'm playing the mirror match, assuming you don't know if you are, but if I'm playing the mirror match, like, how badly can I get punished here by my opponent milling a shuffler and or a Tearlament name? But yeah, this is a bit of a yikes here, as you can see. I have to play through a Sprite Elf protecting the Rulkallos and the Dweller, as well as 3 back rows, one of which I know is Sulliek, and my opponent's got a planet Perlerino on the field. So, oh, and we're going to be under Dweller too. It's not impossible to play through this. Mainly looking to try to Dweller Zeus my way out of it. Gonna start by activating Scream. Opponent's going to immediately Elf for Merrli, which is a good play and makes sense. They managed to find not only a Keldo, but a Fairy Tale Snow off those top 3, which is brutal. Like, that was such a brutal mill for me, for Merrli. Like, that's just... that completely throws every plan I had here. Like a huge wrench in it, honestly, so... Anyway, I'm going to normal summon the Keldo. I'm going to try to activate Scheiren to get another level 4 monster on the field. My opponent's got a Crossout Designator of all cards to negate the Scheiren. So now I don't even really have a way to put 2 level 4 monsters on the field. So yeah, things are just looking very rough. Opponent's got an Imperm. I guess to be fair, if I had tried to Dweller Zeus, they would have had this Imperm, and they still had Sulliek as well. I don't know. It would have been a lot closer. I'm trying to figure out if this duel would have been winnable for me at all. As you can see, I'm just going to ultimately end up conceding here. My opponent is going to end up getting the better of me, again, just because they had a pretty stellar opening hand, and I had a hand without disruption. But that game was a lot closer than it looked, and one of the reasons I like to keep losses like this in videos is I like to, like, watch the replays not only just for myself, but with you all to see, like, is there a way I could have potentially won that duel? This one, I don't know. Because even if my opponent hadn't milled the Keldo and Snow, it still would have been pretty rough. But in any case, we still have some more games to look at, so let's go into the next one here. Here we have a duel against Numeron, which I talked about in the most recent ban list, and still rings true that I've been seeing more of this deck lately. I think because this deck can potentially use a lot of, like, specifically anti-tier tools. So we're going to get the first turn, but then we open a hand that's, well, this one. So I'm just going to pass back to my opponent, which I don't think my Numeron opponent appreciated very much. They're going to start by activating Chicken Game, and as soon as I see this card, I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, it's either Endymion or Numeron. And then I saw the Pathfinder, and I was like, okay, I feel like it's Numeron. But then they grabbed a second Chicken Game, so I was like, maybe it's some kind of, like, Exodia deck. But no, they just already had the Numeron network in hand, so Numeron network's going to activate Sending the Calling. I'm going to fire off one of my 3 Maxi that I opened and get at least 1 draw in here, but probably 2 if they decide to link these off or go for the Chaos #1 or whatever. So top deck to Reinoheart, that would have definitely been much appreciated over the Maxi on turn 1, but you know, we'll make do. Opponent's going to link all 4 of these off, and I was actually anticipating Appaloosa, but my opponent goes for Avermax. I think Appaloosa would have given me more trouble here with a hand like this, but the Avermax we can potentially play around. Oh, you know what? I think I misremembered a game earlier when I was talking about how I was going to go for Drident. I think that's this duel here. That was this duel, that's right, because here's what happened. Here's what happened in my brain, right? I was thinking to myself, oh, my opponent has an Avermax, but they didn't make it with IP. That means I can use my Drident to destroy my card effect. I just completely spaced on the fact that 1, Drident targets, and 2, Avermax can't be targeted. So, yeah, you're going to see me at some point during this turn do a weird pivot where I go for the Zoodiac line, but then just kind of turn it into a Zeus line instead. Which, to be fair, I think was going to be about how I would have had to have gotten rid of this. But if I had accounted for that earlier in the turn, I think I would have played things out differently. Here I'm just going to proc like every effect under the sun, including my Millers, because it's not looking like I'm going to end the duel on this turn, but if I can hit the Numeron Callings that are left in my opponent's deck, then I can stop them from having any chance of coming back too. I do hit one of the Numeron Callings, but my opponent still presumably has a third one left in their deck still. I know sometimes Numerons actually do only play the 2, but no, my opponent seems like they were on 3 here, otherwise they probably would have conceded pretty quickly after the second one got milled, because they don't have a way to recover it, and I'm pretty sure they don't anyway. And without that, they can't, yeah, they have literally no plays at all. So yeah, here I'm going for the Zoodiacs, even though, again, I had already realized that the Drident was going to cut it here. I guess the main thing I wouldn't have done is I wouldn't have summoned this Mudragon. Like, I wouldn't have used that Fuser's effect, because this Mudragon just isn't going to end up doing anything. Or I guess maybe I wouldn't have summoned Fairy Tale Snow. But it's fine. We're still just going to use Zeus and wipe off the board here. That will get rid of the Avermax and also allow me to proc Rulkallos to bring itself back and then Scream for a search. Avermax will get rid of the Zeus. That's kind of annoying, but, you know, worse things could have happened here. So, even though we did misplay, I think it's ultimately fine. I did misplay a little bit here. I should have put this Rulkallos in defense mode instead of attack mode. But there's also the likelihood that, yeah, my opponent's just going to Kaiju it away anyway, so they've got a Kaiju and a Lightning Storm, and then they're going to activate Prosperity. This was kind of confusing to me. I feel like, although to be fair, I guess Prosperity halves damage, so even if they find the network, it's not like they can OTK on this turn anyway. Oh, I didn't even think about that till just now. Because I think what I'm ultimately going to do is use Fairy Tale Snow as a chump block here. But I could have saved 7 of the cards in my yard. I mean, to be fair, I have 23 anyway, so it doesn't really ultimately matter. And you can make an argument that it's right to make sure we don't take the damage here anyway from this Infinite Track that my opponent's going to summon the Mega Collapse. That's the card. But see, it's giving me the lethal final blow thing anyway, so I don't know if, like, does it Prosperity have damage? Yeah, any damage your opponent takes is halved, so I think I would have only taken 2,000 from that, but, I mean, again, whatever. We can afford to block the hit, so I guess we'll just do it anyway. Yeah, my opponent's monster being unaffected by monster effects is completely irrelevant, even though my Zoodiacs are already all in the graveyard. Because I have Sulliek, I can just use that to negate Mega Collapse's effect, and then it can be affected by whatever. It doesn't matter anymore, so not concerned here. Yeah, here's the Sulliek. Can use that to negate the Mega Collapse. We can send Havnis, and I'll just send Scheiren just because I'm just going to make Kaliedo-Heart anyway. Alright, there's that. Now my opponent's negated Megaclops can be put back into the deck by Kaliedo-Heart, and we just smack our opponent with our 3 monsters for lethal. So, it's funny, even though our opening hand looked pretty abysmal, it actually ended up saving us, potentially. Because we didn't play anything on our opening board, our Numeron opponent was not able to OTK us, and yeah, as you can see, managed to come back and finish them off on the crackback. Well, a couple of turns later, but you know what I mean. We do have one more duel to take a look at, so we'll go straight into it now. And our final game is against another branded deck. This one, though, is Branded Dark Magician. Whenever I play against Dark Magician, I kind of feel like I'm bullying them. I think that's kind of more true with Tearlaments, but I'll be honest, it's kind of true of any deck I play, honestly. And especially a hand like this. This hand is so ridiculous. This hand is so ridiculous, I'm going to add Maxx off this Prosperity. Like, I don't even need anything else, because I can just Primeval Planet for Scheiren. Now I have literally all 3 Fusers and Reinoheart in my hand. Like, it's so Jover. My opponent has a Maxx of their own, but like that's not going to be enough to save them here. I'm still going to get to go for the Kitkallos line to give them 1 draw, but it's the only draw they're going to get off this Maxx. And then I can make a Sulliek, and I mean, as you can see, my hand is still just so far and away above what most opening hands look like. In terms of disruption, I have the Sulliek, I have the Maxx that I'm going to use during the draw phase. As always, Zever to play around triple attack. Opponent's going to Branded Fusion. I don't have a way to negate that, but as you can see, they sent Dark Magician Girl alongside of Albaz, revealing that they are on Dark Magicians. Here is Ash Blossom right on time to not stop that Branded Fusion, but that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. I can just use Sulliek to negate the Lubellion, and then, yeah, my opponent's just going to concede right then and there. Yeah, that was just, like, brutal. Like, as you can see, my opponent didn't even get to realize how brutal that opening was. Like, even with the Maxx, you know, they still end up conceding pretty quickly, but without it, oh my god, this was the definition of a do whatever you want hand for Ishizu Tearlaments. So that's going to go ahead and do it for these games, for our kind of well, we're not post-banlist yet, but we're testing a post-banlist build, and yeah, my consensus, again, I think, is that even with a lot of the Ishizu cards limited, Tearlaments still feels pretty close to as powerful as it was before. Now, there is the consideration that stuff like Branded is getting more tools as well, but I think that Tearlament is still going to be pretty far and away the best deck of the format moving forward. So let's go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me, not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There, for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But That's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.